Okay, I think we're ready now to call the annual organizational meeting to order at 7:45 p.m. May I have a roll call, please?
Yep. Okay. All right. Okay. Ms. Rose. Here. Mr. Conine.
Here.
Mr. Surlis.
Here.
Ms. Clark. Here. Mr. Roberts.
Here.
Ms. Wilson. Here. Ms. Livingston. I'm sorry.
Here.
There we go.
Here.
Okay.
Okay. I think first thing we have to do is appoint a pro tem president. So I'd like a motion for that, please.
I'll make a motion to appoint Steve as our president pro tem to run this meeting.
Second.
Second.
2 seconds. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Very good. All right, this is exciting. We get to swear in our newly elected board members. So at this time, I'd like to welcome all three of them. Megan Pangy Wilson. Where's Megan? There you are. I get used to the new configuration. Nancy Clark, right? And Emily Rose. Welcome to the table. So please stand. And Dawn, wherever you are, stand.
I'm standing, don't worry.
Sand between your toes, that's okay. And I'd like you to read aloud together the oath that's in front of you. Anytime.
I, Emily Wilson,
Then,
do solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office
that the office of member of the
Public School District 36 in accordance
with the Constitution of the United States,
the
Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the law
the State of
Illinois to the best of my ability. I further swear that I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as faithful protector of school district assets. I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board, while respecting the privacy of students and employees. I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual, and that decisions can be made only by majority vote at a public board meeting. I shall abide by majority decisions of the board, while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels. As a part of the Board of Education, I shall accept the responsibility for my role in the equitable and quality education of every student in the school district. I shall foster with the board extensive participation of the community, formulate goals, define outcomes, and set the course for Winnetka Public School District 36. I shall assist in establishing a structure and an environment designed to ensure all students have the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework. I shall strive to ensure continuous assessment of student achievement and all conditions affecting the education of our children in compliance with state law. I shall serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students and our community schools to advance the vision of the Winnetka Public Schools District 36. And I shall strive to work together with the district superintendent to lead the school district toward fulfilling the vision the board has created, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills, knowledge, citizenship, and personal development.
Wow, take a breath. Congratulations, everyone. Wow. That's fantastic. Welcome. So immediately get down to business. So what we need to do now is set some responsibilities for folks on the board for the upcoming year as we think about officer positions. So as outlined in policy 2110, annually the board elects or appoints officers for the positions of president, vice president, and secretary at this organizational meeting. So first, nominations are in order for the office of president of the board. Do I have a nomination? I will nominate Dawn Livingston.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That's what happens when you're not here.
Congratulations, Dawn.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so next nominations are in order for office of the vice president of the board. Do I have a nomination?
Would like to nominate Steve Cirulis to be our vice president.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Your
Great.
wife.
Oh, boy. Okay, last one here. Nominations are now in order for the office of secretary of the board. Do I have a nomination?
I nominate Emily Rose.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, fantastic. Congratulations. Okay, now, next order of business is school board meeting dates. Just gets more exciting. Again, per policy 210, the board sets the time and date for its regular meetings for the upcoming school year at this organizational meeting. The schedule reflects the same general timing for those meetings as this current year, adjusting for holidays as needed. The meetings will continue to be held on Tuesday evenings. We're maintaining the practice of rotating school locations. Therefore, beginning with the August school board meeting this year, regular monthly meetings will be held at Greeley School. It is exciting, right? All right, so a motion is requested that the school board approve the schedule of school board meeting dates as submitted.
Move.
The following regular meetings will take place at 7:15 p.m. at Greeley School. Thank you for the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Okay. Ms. Rose?
Yes.
Mr. Conine?
Yes.
Mr. Surless?
Yes.
Ms. Livingston?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Pangy Wilson?
Yes.
Okay. There it is. All right, so next element to work through is the board development with Illinois Association of School Boards. So Dee Molinari is the IASB field director from the Illinois Association of School Boards that serves DuPage and North Cook counties. She will facilitate a board development work session for us on May the 13th from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and that location is still to be determined. Okay. All right, so the next piece of business is to be conducted at this meeting is to determine the voting order, the committee assignments, and to confirm registration for new board members to complete mandatory board training. So regarding the voting order, it's up to the board to determine whether an alphabetical or a random roll call will be taken when voting is required. So I'll ask you all to chime in. How many of you are in favor of maintaining a random roll call?
I am.
I am.
Works for me.
3? Is that a yes?
Yes.
4, 5? Okay.
Fine.
Anyone want to initiate an alphabetical instead of a random? And if so, I want to hear all the rationale. Okay, we'll continue with the random.
So excited.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to discuss and ask for volunteers for the committees. That's under policy 2-150. All right. Fantastic. So where are we starting? Okay. So for standing committees, let's go with the ever favorite policy committee.
Yes.
So
I'm down with that.
Scott is going to go a second run at the policy committee. That's fantastic. Who else is going to
I
volunteer?
would be happy to volunteer to be part of the policy committee.
Okay, then we need a volunteer for the parent-teacher advisory committee.
It's like basically one meeting a year is required in board policy.
If nobody wants to do it, I'll do it. I mean, it has been very low stress on my schedule.
Well, we are looking to meet the second Friday here in May.
So I didn't bring my calendar, but I mean, if somebody else wants to do it, please step up, but I'll do it if it needs to be done.
I can do it. I'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, now we need an NSSED committee member? Okay, thanks, Maxie.
And Maxie, just, you know, that's a monthly meeting, and a whole separate board, so.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Okay, next we need 2 volunteers for the calendar committee.
This is the fastest way to make sure that no one in town gets your friend's agent.
It's a double-edged sword, calendar. We need,
I do love it.
Maxie is one.
I do love the calendar, good. Excellent.
And I will do a second spin in honor of Scott doing 2 on policy. I'll do 2 on calendar, so sign me up for that. All right, so then the next committee is the facilities committee. I'll need 3 volunteers for the facilities committee.
If I can stay on that one.
So we have Scott,
I'd like to stand that if I could.
okay, and Nat, and...
I would be happy to volunteer for the
Great,
facility.
there's those 3. All right, and then likewise 3 for the financial committee. I will throw my hat into that ring as one of those 3 slots.
I'd like to be on that if I could.
Okay,
And I would like to serve on that as well.
great. There's our 3. And then we need some board liaisons to different groups in the area. The first is a liaison for the Alliance for Early Childhood.
I'll go.
Emily's
Yeah.
Emily's been humble.
Collecting
Involved in
them.
that group, yeah.
I've been very involved. I'd be happy to carry on.
And then central PTO reps, we typically will rotate among 3 people to attend one meeting, the one meeting that there is a month.
I would love to do that.
I can do that too.
Maxie, Scott,
I would as well. Be happy to volunteer for that.
okay, I'm not familiar with the acronym, the RED.
Ed, right, it's a policy lobby group that represents suburban districts down Springfield, so they'll have events and communications more or less for hosts, so Dawn, you know, anybody can be on that. I'll attend events sometimes, and a board member might join.
I attend as well.
Yeah. So if there wants to be, if you're interested in policy work.
It's a lot of policy.
Yeah.
Stuff.
You're making it sound so...
Just kidding.
Well, you have a chance to change, to influence policy at the state level, so.
If it's a short story, I'll take it.
Okay.
Somebody else want it?
Don, you must still be on mute. The WPS Foundation rep.
I would be happy to volunteer to get involved in WPSF.
Done. Okay, we need a park district rep.
I'll continue to do that unless somebody else wants to. And somebody want to do it? I'll do it.
And then SSCT is already done. Okay, that was good. All right, put me to work already. That's good.
Did you want to
Oh, for the stewardship committee,
I'm doing that now as ex officio.
Okay.
I love that group. I love that committee.
next month, so take.
They would love you.
All right, we'll do next
Yeah.
month. So that's the Crow Island Stewardship Group has officially formed a 501(c), so they need a board rep on that, so we'll make sure and make that move.
Okay, and there's an item here to discuss board member training, but I think
So our new, just to highlight a few things, so there's required state trainings for the public too, that all school board members have to take within so many days of being elected and sitting at the table here. So I know, as I openly, that our incoming board members have already dedicated a lot of time to orientation, actually over 20 hours of in-district orientation. Then also we'll be taking, I think, an additional 12 to 15 with the state. So just, I think you're well aware of the calendar and options for you on that, so, okay. Thanks.
all right, so here we go. We're at the motion to adjourn. A motion is requested that the school board adjourn this organization meeting.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Quick transition. Do we want to take a break? We good?
Keep
Keep rolling?
Order now.
Okay, all right, so now I'm going to call the next meeting to order at, I don't know if that's convenient, 8 o'clock exactly. Can Can I get a roll call, please?
Okay, Ms. Pangy Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Roberts.
Here.
Ms. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Surless.
Here.
Ms. Livingston.
Here.
Mr. Conine.
Here.
Ms. Rose.
Here.
Okay. Listen, before we dig in, I want to share a few words. First of all, to the new board members and the ones who are continuing to buckle in, right? We've got some important, some complex, and some hopefully some fulfilling work ahead of us as we continue our roles in balancing the education needs of our students, the professional needs of our administrators and faculty, and the civic needs of our voters and taxpayers. And it was in that spirit that we put forth a referendum to address the aging infrastructure of our schools and updating our learning environments. And while the referendum decidedly did not receive community approval, it gives us an opportunity to re-examine and refine the educational master facilities plan to better align with what the community values and with what this district can afford. So to start the process of re-examination and refinement of the EMFB, right? We met as a board last week, so the board members who just finished, as well as the newly elected board members, we took advantage of an opportunity we could get everyone together, and we discussed our thoughts on the referendum, shared some comments that we heard around the community, and began in earnest planning our way forward. The one thing that was clear from all of the conversation was that regardless of whether folks had voted for or against it, it was obvious to us that the community overwhelmingly supports our schools, just not the proposed plan that we put forward to improve them. So we take that and we carry it with us. And as we start to think about how to move forward, we are ever cognizant of the time constraints, the limited resources we have, but also the work to be done. So we committed to the following things a week ago as a way to start the process. One is listen to learn. All right, so we need to take the necessary time, we believe, to re-engage the community, to better understand the motivations and perspectives as to why the referendum did not pass, as well as to hear any forward-thinking solutions that they may have to add as well. And in order to accomplish that, we agreed to engage the community in a survey, a representative survey, and we realized that has its benefits and its drawbacks. And then because of that, we're going to also engage in some informal meetings with community members and some listening sessions, right, to get some of the texture and some of the rationale and some of the more insightful things that you can't get from a survey. And also, along those lines, have some focus groups with representative constituencies to, again, get as many of the dimensions as we can to understand what's going to keep this community focused on the things that we need to, and so that we as a board can collect all of that and come back with something that we feel is going to be something that will benefit and balance all those things that we talked about. The second thing is we agreed to plan with speed and rigor. So we agreed to build a timeline that to a refined plan that incorporates that output from the listening work, as well as input from design professionals, and as well as perspective from our newest board members. And we recognize that the community doesn't always have an appetite for a long, drawn-out process, so we appreciate that. So we're going to continue to engage in refining the plan with fiscal responsibility, a commitment to progressive education, as we've always had, as well as community feedback on the scope, the cost, as well as the tax tolerance of anything we decide to put forward. Now, I want to make it clear, a future referendum date has not been decided, and it will be up to the board to decide when we do that, but we're going to do it based on the evidence of community readiness that we see as we go through this process. And third, we agreed that we always have to maintain our critical community assets while we go through this refinement process. So our schools still need some TLC, and we have some budget to spend against that. So while we address the long term, we're going to make some necessary improvements in the short term to address some key needs. So we expect to approve and proceed with the most urgent $14 million of projects over the next 4 years. So I think I speak for everyone here when I say we're energized by the challenge, right? This is something that we think is important. And as we work to determine the prior referendum, right, this same process will be driven by us, will be driven by the board, with support from the administration. We remain confident in the administration's diligence, capability, and capacity to assist us in this work. And frankly, we know we need a solution that works. And we encourage the community to remain involved, to engage. Some of you are here tonight. Thank you for continuing with your engagement. All the while, our facility needs will not go away, nor does our commitment to finding the right solution for our critical community assets and our tradition of exceptional education. So we're excited to go forward together, and stay tuned as we continue to work the more detailed elements of this once we get through the listening portion of our work. Okay? So I hand it over to you, Trish.
Any public comment?
Oh, sorry. Any public comment?
There's no public comment at the second meeting.
Okay? Great. So Trish, I'll turn it over to you for
Sure.
superintendent report.
Sure, absolutely. So, welcome first of all to our new board members. Like we said, they've been showing their dedication already by spending the amount of time they have on orientation, just being out and about in our schools, which has been well received by our staff and administration as well. I just want to, I think Steve did an excellent job summarizing where we are in this process. I hope everybody had a chance to read the wire this month too that I sent out last week, because it does talk about the values of this community and the school system. I want to recognize through the honorees at the Chamber's annual recognition lunch, where our own Daniel Ryan was named Educator of the Year, and our very own Victor Cooper, a Washburn KW teacher, was Man of the Year and has had quite an influence on this community. We also were able to celebrate Marzouk Rashid, who is the Youth Achievement Honoree for his creative concept of a binary heart program, where they take he works and has now created a club in New Trier High School, and it's now evolved into other environments as well, where they refurbish old tech devices and give those to others in need. So really living our vision of making a meaningful difference in the world. So at this event, we were able to hear from all the honorees, and Daniel talked about, let me pull a quote here when he spoke. He said, the progressive education of Carleton Washburn that initiated 100 years ago still stands today. We are dedicated to what is best for children. And as he thanked the Winnetka community, he encouraged us to continue the interchange of ideas and instilling democratic values in our students. So as we do come together as a community past to move forward post-referendum, it is evident there's a desire to work together. We feel it, we know it, we hear it. Our community values our schools, our teachers feel extremely supported, and that will only propel us to be able to find this right-sized solution. I also want to say that the referendum clearly took a great deal of time and energy, but we never left our focus, which was ensuring that our children had an excellent experience in our classrooms and support our teachers. We were able to make sure that work never distracted us from really our annual goals and our vision. So I just want to make sure that that's clear as well going forward. So thank you. And we'll talk more on that referendum in just a minute. So to our new board members, we'll be wrapping up this meeting and the working agreements with the most current board, where we have informational memos that I'll summarize. If you do have questions, we have administrators that can help answer them, or I can answer them. I do know part of that meeting that we have on May 13th with Dee Molnair from the School Board Association, we'll have an opportunity, this board, to look at how the meetings are run, how we present information, how we manage all of that so that this board's needs are met. So this will likely change to the community as this board comes together and makes some decisions. But with that, I just want to give our updates. So the first is our monthly update of our strategic plan. So we have 2 times throughout the year, we have a comprehensive update on our annual goals of our strategic plan, in mid-year, January, and then June at the end of the year. But we like to keep some sort of focus on the good work that goes on. So we ask our administrators to summarize what's happening in each of the goal areas. So in this month's update, some highlights include Skokie students who are engaging in inquiry learning related to hydroponics and green technology. We also are looking at our services in MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems of support, which is a fancy way of saying when a student's in need, how do we best support them, and with what sorts of services to make sure that we help catch them up in sort of gap as soon as possible. So we're looking at those criteria that we're identifying students in need in the areas of math, reading, and writing. And then we also have continued to engage our parents and brought them in as partners in education. And we had a great collaboration with New Trier Township and offered a screen time session for parents on how to manage that, which can be quite tricky. So I don't know if there's any questions on the monthly goal update.
I just had a quick question for Maureen on the Nearpod pilot at Hubbard Woods. I was wondering if you could share just a touch more about what it is and how the students are collaborating using the tool.
Sure. So Nearpod is an app that allows teachers to guide a student through a lesson. So they can embed images, video, and the screen moves as the teacher moves it. So what it does is it heightens student engagement. The teacher can lock the screen so that they are sure that nothing's happening that they shouldn't be on, and kind of watch what's going on as class is going on. So that's what Nearpod does. So it's really an engagement tool and opportunities to bring more multimedia into a lesson.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Anything else? Okay. All right, next then is a comprehensive update as one of our major goals. Beth Martin, our Director of Student Services, provided a lengthy memo on our update on two major goals. One is to strengthen our MTSS practices to effectively identify and serve students who require intervention in reading, writing, and math, and to implement co-teaching and instructional coaching models to enhance the integrated service delivery in our elementary schools. So in this update, there was an overview of progress to date, highlighting some of the professional development, some of the decisions that have been made regarding services, and also we've had an opportunity this year to work closely in our buildings and with the support of NSSED to have a number of focus groups with our staff, both special ed and general ed, to understand what are some of the most important topics and priorities that we want to address to help move this goal forward. So that then informed what you see as the next steps from April to June, and then Beth is also working on steps for next school year, but we appreciate everyone's effort in that area. Questions on this update?
I just had a question about how you're building the capacity for the general ed teachers.
Sure. And the co-teaching goes on as well. Okay. I can start, or do you want to go ahead?
No, I mean, I think from a lot of that is through co-teaching training and just giving them opportunities to be in it. If we are doing co-teaching training, that they're going together with the special educators, so that as the team, we're building that team's capacity together, not independently, which will learn from one another and how they're going to support one another in the general education classroom. I think it's really important that there's collaboration there from the get-go, so you're not going independently of the teacher that you would be co-teaching with.
Yeah, we've talked about this in meetings conceptually. There was often, this is not unique to Winnetka, you have a track for special ed educators even, that they pretty much became, came together as a group, would get the same professional learning, would get the same sort of schedule, availability to collaborate, which was great, but it was separate and apart from the general education teachers often. The professional development was often based on specific strategies and interventions for special ed teachers. And, classroom teachers would often focus more on content. Of course, they had the strategies piece too, but they were seen more or less as parallel tracks. And what's really happened over the course of the last few years of this goal is those tracks have become, intersecting now. They're together. So that our special education teachers want to go to content. We just sent a number of special educators to the National Math Conference, and they loved it, right? Because they're learning more about the content. And then we have, to your point, Maxie, a number of our general ed teachers are going to professional learning with their special educator colleagues or learning some of those strategies as well. So it becomes, maximizing the capacity of high quality educators all the time rather than having separate programs for them. So that's been our main goal for us, and more of what our educators are looking for in their pursuit of more learning.
I just had one more question. When we went through the school tours, Beth, we saw some of the classrooms where the co-teaching was happening, and it was apparent from the teachers and from the feedback that they were having a lot of success with those setups. And so my other question is, from the student lens, are you seeing that not just the students who per se need the assistance, but the whole classroom is benefiting from this model of collaborative teaching?
Well, I can say absolutely, and I would actually ask Beth Carmody to comment on that, because she's living it here right now, and even I think you've got a sub in your program.
We do.
In the
So
classroom right now that can speak to that as well.
one of our teachers in our COTA is on maternity leave right now, and a teacher who just retired 2 years ago from our district is her long-term substitute. And she stopped me in the hall and she said, "Beth, do you know how amazing this is? This is the most amazing thing I've ever been a part of." So that's extremely encouraging. We have parents who are saying, "How do I get my child into that classroom when they don't have the specific need for being in that classroom?" They're seeing the empathy and the kindness and all those pieces kind of kick in, and really appreciating the diversity that's brought into that classroom. So we found that it's been successful for everyone in that room.
Thank you.
Sure.
And Beth has been working with the teams too to make sure we have the qualitative measures and the quantitative measures, and we can dovetail those so that we can really monitor, the effectiveness. As we said, this is a continuum of services, so it's not a regimen that everyone gets. We want to make sure we customize the right sized intervention at the right time in the least restrictive environment. So getting this sort of data will really help us make sure that that's happening. So, okay.
When does that data come back to us?
So you'll get some in June. So you had some midpoint data that we had, and then you'll get a comprehensive data in June. So excellent. All right. Next is our monthly redistricting. Oh, the trusted learning environment, sorry, is the next one. I got ahead of myself. So the trusted learning environment is a fancy way of really ensuring that we have strong data security. So with privacy, we're not unique in education to other industries where we have a great deal of data, a great deal of privacy and private information, that we want to make sure we're upholding the highest quality standards. So the district is actually, Maureen Miller, Director of Technology, is co-leading a regional collaborative to earn the International Consortium of School Networking Trusted Learning Environment seal. And so to earn this seal, the district must employ 25 data security and privacy best practices in the areas of leadership, business, data security, classroom, and professional development. So we're looking to submit our application in this area in August 2019. And we're very fortunate to be part of something, and a collaborative like that, and to help lead that, so we can build a system, because as we know, data security, the threats to data evolve, right, and become more sophisticated. So the idea is to get a system in place that isn't targeting, one specific threat or a vulnerability, to really, how do we build systems in place so that we can have a dynamic environment that will get ahead and be as proactive as possible to keeping that data safe and secure. Other questions on that? Okay. Then, finally, we have our redistricting monthly memo. So we now eagerly, we understand there are families that have been very patient as we work through our referendum process too, who now are, very kindly, but wanting to make sure that we stay on track with our redistricting plan, which we are fully committed to do, which has us coming forward with a recommendation in September and the ideal board approval in October of any new sort of boundaries. So what we'll be doing in the next board meeting on May 21st, and we'll be prepared to include a comprehensive presentation and communication plan launch, so that it's clarity around what are the milestones that we're going to hit between now and the fall, and what's the community engagement, and how's the board going to be involved in that. So we're full eyes on that process, and want to be as forthcoming as possible. And we'll, again, continue to engage our realtors in this area as well, who've been good partners to us and are asking for the information. We did update the redistricting fact sheet that was originally posted in November. So we updated that to have April on that, so to send a clear message there. And then as we roll out a communication plan too, we'll update our website on that and get that communication out to our community and our realtors. Any questions on that? Okay. All right. So now we are shifting gears. We have one presentation this evening. Steve did a nice job kind of setting the stage for this presentation. So as noted, the board had an opportunity, not only the city board members at the time, but the 3 new board members here before us, to come together last week and prepare so that there was not only words to our eagerness to move forward, but we had actions ready to go. So tonight then, we just want to highlight a few of the areas that were discussed last week and that we've been able to work on since that time. So, you know, as a reminder, obviously the community and this board engaged in a process to develop the first educational master facility plan over 20 years, which the first approach was to have the referendum of $90.6 million on April 2nd. The committee voted on a referendum, as Steve shared. There was clear feedback from our community with 63.5% voted against the referendum, with 36.5% voting for the referendum. Just as a calibration point, the results of the April 2nd referendum related to public school districts in Illinois, of the 32 questions that were across the state, only 34% were successful too. So it was a lower success rate across the state. Certainly just a calibration point. We also, at this time, wanted to look, I know that we're going back and evaluating and using as much of the data and information that we gathered. That's still going to be very helpful to us as we plan forward over the past year or so. And Brad and I have been working on summarizing some of the costs that have gone into the referendum planning and the master planning and calibrating those. So, for instance, we looked at this today for the master planning process that went from March, really, or June of 2017 to October 2018. The cost of that primarily going towards DLR as our partner, and that was around $193,000. That includes data research, communication, architect planning, cost estimation. And then from the time when the educational master facility plan was approved to the referendum, for all of those areas, about $86,000, which is on track. So we want to look at that, and a lot of that, the costs and services that were embedded in this are still going to be usable to us and helpful to us as we move forward. So tonight, I want to talk a little bit about the 4 areas that Steve talked about. So I'll talk about community outreach first. So you pull that up. I know, turn over here to Brad shortly. So in the area of community outreach, it was important. Thank you. Thank you. Yep, that's what I needed. That we will collect post-referendum feedback before determining the next steps. That's the listen. So I want to listen and make sure that we have a clear picture and landscape. So what does that mean then? So we will have, go to the next slide, we will have a community-wide survey. We will have facilitated focus groups that will be ideally run by a professional. We'll launch tomorrow a dedicated email address, next steps, d36@winnetka36.org, to have any community member who's eager to share some ideas on how to best move forward, that there's an outlet to do that right away, and that will be available for the board to see, and we'll also review that for themes and patterns. And the board also will have outreach with individuals engaged in the referendum. So there's an effort of this board to coordinate that so that there's a clear set of questions that we want to ask those community members so that we can get clear and consistent feedback. So that work is going to be done. We have a couple of board members, Emily and Scott, volunteered to work with administration on identifying the right partners for us on these surveys and focus groups. And we're meeting for a number of hours next week so that we can review some of the potential partners and the associated plans and timelines with that and costs, and come back to this board as, you know, ideally May 13th at that board training session, maybe able to have an update there as far as what that will look like as we want to get that feedback. Any questions about, I think we'll pause after each section here, any questions or comments that you want to add about community outreach post-referendum?
I want to make a point on your earlier comment about the costs. When the 3 of us were running, all 4 candidates running agreed that we needed to come up with a plan before we just went spending money willy-nilly on things, and that the district was spending significant money every year and we needed a plan. So I am pleased to see that I recognize we have a vast amount of district time in the process, both parent time and administrative and teacher time. But the costs, I think we've held to a good, reasonable number across both the planning and then the outreach to let people know what was in that planning. And I think that there's a prudent spending of the money. And we can use a lot of that going forward. And I want to recognize that because we don't need to talk about it going later, but we managed that well, so well done.
And I think I would add that until we really understand, where the community's feedback lies, it's premature to say that it was poorly spent. I think the money, developed the plan, and we just have to understand then from the community kind of where the pinch points were, so.
And the data is there. The data remains what it is.
Okay. So we're going to move on to facility maintenance and the plans involved in that. Every 10 years, they do a decennial survey of health, life, safety. This was completed for the last one was completed in 2015 by Green Associates, our architect of record. And there's about $6.5 million remaining in work related to that health, life, safety survey that is still left on our list. This was updated by DLR Group in July of 2017 as part of phase one, the physical assessment of our buildings. And they identified additional items to this health, life, safety plan. And they broke this down into several different categories, including health, life, safety. And these projects are, as you can see here, that we've addressed since 2015 include Hubbard Woods roof, playgrounds, boiler tubing, electrical. Now when we're talking about electrical, that's not electric as a whole. It's not adding outlets or runs or updating wiring. It's more addressing panel issues where there are some, and any fire safety hazards related to electrical. We also replaced the greeley stage ceiling. And then when I came on board in 2017, we were in the process of updating Crow Island. And the health, life, safety items we took care of there were the roof, the fire sprinkler system, and portions of the ceiling. And then last year, with our projects on hold, we have put a lot of things on hold over the last several years because we knew we were in the middle of the educational master facility plan. We just addressed the playground at Crow Island. Again, we're just referencing health, life, safety items here. We did add a cafeteria at Washburn. We did take care of the piping issue there, but those weren't considered life safety items.
Right, and just to clarify, so the pause on those health, life, safety items were so we were not, should a referendum have passed and we would have done that work, we wouldn't have been double investing and losing some of that, basically investing the money that we were going to be tearing up in a couple of years. So that's why I said on pause. You'll see what we're going to propose tonight, and we're going to get caught back up right on track. I know Adam Rappaport, Director of Buildings and Grounds, is very happy and had a great plan in place ready to do that. So although we paused, there was not this long multi-year gap of deferred maintenance. We were really strategic about it and now are able to get right back on track to very close to what our original plans were going to be.
Yes.
And so one question, these Illinois health, life, safety requirements, that punch list is non-discretionary.
No, it's spelled out in the Illinois Health, Life, Safety Code as part of the board packet, and any community member can click on the board packet and see the health, life, safety overview that's part of the board packet. It's included in the memo. It lists out what is included in health, life, safety, what's considered health, life, safety by the state.
So this is something we have to do this.
Yes.
And we have to do
Yes,
this.
and there's a priority list. It spells it out in the code, what is priority A, B, and C, and the time frame in which you have to do this.
Okay.
So going forward, we certainly believe it's necessary to ensure our buildings remain assets instead of liabilities by taking care of these remaining health, life, safety items. Many of these items have been on hold, as Trish said, through the Educational Master Facility Plan. We have $1.1 million in work slated for this summer already. We've actually, believe we kicked it off this last week during our day off on Friday, kicked off some summer work. And then we will utilize the summers of 21 through 2023 to finalize this plan. And this is continuing our practice of ensuring we don't interrupt our wonderful summer programming, including Adventures in Learning, extended school year, as well as our partnerships with the Park District and the TWIG program. So we'll still be able to have those programs in place without disrupting them. We may have to move them around through these summers, but they'll still be in place, which is important. So we're moving on to exactly what's included in the health, life, safety plan. As you can see here, electrical, that includes panels and generators. Again, health, life, safety doesn't address capacity as far as additional outlets in the classroom, so that would not be addressed. Equipment such as door, hardware, rails, gates, lighting, fire separation walls, these are all part of the equipment piece and making sure our buildings are safe. We need to have safe egress in the event of a fire. We need to make sure our hardware is up to date, as well as lighting, making sure it's energy efficient and updated. Exterior work such as concrete, asphalt, you'll see, I noticed as I was walking around the building this morning that part of a curb is missing in front. So addressing those needs, lighting, insulation from the exterior such as outside lighting, masonry, tuck pointing, windows, skylights and gutters. Those things don't last forever. They tend to leak over time, and downspouts. Those included in the exterior portion of health, life, safety. We also address mechanical HVAC items such as boilers, unit ventilation systems, rooftop units, and pumps. So outdated and outmoded items are replaced as they reach their end of life. Plumbing, piping. This will not necessarily address the lead mitigation, but will address outdated steam piping that has been in place for 100 years. So obviously we as a facilities subcommittee will need to work together and determine the best method to replace that. Obviously you probably aren't going to replace it with steam, you'll probably replace it with dual temperature piping, as that would make the most sense if we ever do move forward with air conditioning. Toilets, sinks, water fountains, ensuring those are updated. Roofing is pretty explanatory. Site work such as grading, making sure we don't have flooding issues in our buildings, sidewalks, curbs, foundation, playground equipment, and then finishes. And these are finishes related to health, life, safety, not related to cosmetics, which are not being addressed. Things such as walls, cracks, seals, and flooring. So it's to prevent deterioration of the physical plant. So if there's bad glazing on a window or sealant, it's to prevent water from coming in and making the situation worse. If there's cracks in the foundation that will allow water infiltration, it's addressing those items as health, life, safety. If we're talking just a cracked floor tile that doesn't create a danger, we aren't going to address that. Painting isn't necessarily going to be addressed in the finishes. So we're looking at the timeline, and again, we've done that with a focus on not interrupting our summer programs. We do have $1.1 million as I planned this summer for all schools excluding Skokie. We don't have anything planned at Skokie, but we do. A majority will be happening at Greeley. In 2021, we will be focusing primarily on Skokie and Crow Island with $4.7 million in work related to health, life, safety. Washburn will have $4 million in health, life, safety work in 21-22. And then 2022-23 will finish up Greeley's health, life, safety work, as well as address the remaining work at Hubbard Woods. So about $12.9 million remaining after this summer and $14 million in total. And we have escalated those costs at 3% each year, which is what Pepper Construction had recommended. Again, that addresses health, life, safety. The things that will not be addressed are items related to the Americans with Disability Act or accessibility, and the reason behind that is that law does not affect our buildings as they were built prior to the law coming into effect. Now, obviously, as we update buildings, we would need to comply with that law, and it is still a priority for the district to ensure that folks have access to our buildings. Safety and security upgrades will be minimal. We will have updates in panic hardware on our doors, but we won't be able to put the panic system that Tricia was talking about during our referendum effort or to do much work on our vestibules. But we will obviously make sure we have safety and security in place. Electrical upgrades is a big portion of this. As you can see, $10.4 million, and that would address panels and outlets and making sure we have adequate access in our classrooms for iPad carts and Chromebooks and the like. With all the technology we have in the buildings these days, we just don't have the capacity And we do experience shortages of outlets in our buildings. Domestic water piping will not be addressed, and we won't see the lead mitigation as a piece of this project. We have seen some piping updates over the years, but just horizontal runs. Horizontal runs are a lot easier to address because you have easier access to them. Once you get into the vertical runs inside the walls, you're disrupting the walls, and so it's much more invasive. And then air conditioning, as you can see, is the largest piece here, will not be addressed. We will probably be replacing some rooftop units that are 20 or 30 years old as part of the health, life, safety. It looks at those units that are in place, but it certainly doesn't say you need to add air conditioning as part of health, life, safety. And then those cosmetic things that I was talking about, just finishes that aren't health, life, safety related would be on hold.
Right, and just to clarify too, so these were other areas, according to baseline items in the referendum, so just want to be clear about what's not covered in health, life, safety. So as we put here clearly is that the board's facility committee, so those that signed up for that again tonight, will have to look at these and look at the financials, which is the next portion of this meeting, and try to reconcile, if there are some prioritization, such as let's mitigate the lead in the piping and the water. How do we fit that into the cycle? What makes the most sense? How does that dovetail with anything else we want to do? And how do we have the financial means to do so? So that's the sort of work that would be reviewed, above and beyond the health, life, safety with the facility subcommittee.
Can I make I want to clarify something, make sure I ask this question clearly. We are shutting off any tap that says it has too much lead in it now.
Correct.
Right? I mean, I want to make sure it's clear.
Yes.
We do not have lead coming out of functioning taps to the best of our knowledge.
We don't have it coming out of taps that are used for either food service or water fountains or in, everything's labeled hand washing only that is over. And we certainly have turned off all the water fountains that had any trace of lead.
Right. So I want to make that
Yes,
really clear,
yes,
right?
it is
Yeah,
important to
and
know.
that's-
This would give us more drinking water availability in the schools,
Correct.
but not that we have lead flowing through those
No, our children
drinking
are,
areas right now.
yes, we've shut all those off and we are testing yearly to ensure that if there are pipes that are running higher levels of lead, that we do take them offline. We took a couple offline this year.
So just to clarify, so what the state requires, they required you to basically mitigate the issue, right? By either turning off the water source, right, or putting up the signage, which is what we did. So we're in full compliance. Where we're going above and beyond is this annual testing, because it's, the outcomes will change potentially. You've seen it from year to year. So that's where we're investing to make sure we keep tabs of the water sources and make those annual adjustments.
Yeah, and I think just to comment for the facility committee, I think part of what will be important is obviously $1.4 million doesn't seem like a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. So how does that then function within the other demands? And are there creative solutions, maybe that if we choose not to, that we employ within the facilities in order to give the kids
Access to water. And we've done that over the years. We've added several, you'll see the bottle filling stations that the PTO has generously donated and
Right.
that have allowed us to take other water fountains offline.
Yeah, I just think my experience is limited in terms of the one school that I have kids at, but it's sometimes hard for a third grader on the third floor of Greeley to get all the way down to the water filling station. So do we have availability across the school as required for the kids to get what they need? So
Clearly that is high on my list of things to figure out how to get to.
absolutely.
Can I ask you, when you have a water main break like you did at Crow Island a couple weeks ago, how does that affect the budget, or where does that play into how you pay for remediating that?
We've got a little buffer in for emergencies in our operations and maintenance fund. So it's obviously, we don't plan for those things, but we do set aside money for the day-to-day stuff. But we had one yesterday at Skokie, a pinhole leak in our piping yesterday. So it's not incomprehensible that we can see these things popping up in 100-year-old buildings. So we do put some emergency reserve funds in there to take care of these projects, such as the polar vortex. We had the piping burst in the foyer of Washburn. So we do have funds available in there, but if we had a major thing that wasn't covered by our insurance, then we would have to look for funds within our operating funds.
And as we go to the next section of this with the financial planning, some of those contingency funds are to become, so we'll have to reevaluate how much we're putting in and
We
make sure.
find year to year that that we're going over those set asides we have. We'll certainly have to look to build those up a little bit more as we see these problems pop up.
I know it goes without saying, but Adam, again, we had to turn off water half the school at Skokie yesterday, but we were able to quickly take care of the issue and get it back up and running and make sure that we had a good solution to prepare, to hold off until that scheduled update was coming in next summer.
Any other questions regarding the facilities piece before I move on to the finance?
So we have one lesson. So the funds here, the estimates, right, were part of the baseline work, right?
Right.
So that was done, whatever, a year
July
ago?
2017,
July 2017.
almost
So
2 years.
there's probably an escalation even on these numbers, right? 3% you estimate roughly.
Yeah, well, we've built in, so those numbers,
These aren't reflective of that increase. These are as of 2017.
we've inflated them
Or
forward.
you inflated the board, okay.
All right, so we'll move on to financial planning. We will be working on setting up a meeting with our finance committee very soon in the early part of May. As I mentioned, we have $2 million remaining in our capital projects fund going into next year. We plan our summer projects so that they're out of that the budget that starts July 1st. So we are looking at the 2020 funding to reduce that by $1.1 million in our capital projects fund for the summer work that's happening this summer. Our health, life, safety projects, as I mentioned, total $14 million. That will leave us with about $12.9 million in health, life, safety issues. And then we project deficit spending beginning in fiscal year 2021 with a projected deficit of just under $1 million in that year. And in 2023, we begin to see our fund balance fall below the 50% threshold set by our board policy. Our board policy calls for fund balance in our operating funds of between 50 and 60%. Obviously, we can, as a finance subcommittee starts meeting, we can reevaluate that and determine if that is appropriate. And then the finance and subcommittee and full board will need to reconcile this with the combination of evaluation of our budget and with obviously the goal of impacting students minimally, as well as looking at our deficit spending over the next 4 years.
This may seem like an odd question.
Yes.
I probably should know the answer, but I don't remember.
Okay.
Where do we stand with the TIF?
TIF is kind of
Alive? Still?
no.
The TIF, the village was considering, has been communicated, that's been a dormant issue at the moment.
Okay. I was just thinking, if indeed that were in place, that's a factor which makes this even more.
Yes. No. Luckily, that has fallen off the radar. Any questions regarding the finance piece? As I mentioned, we'll be scheduling a finance subcommittee meeting in early May to start brainstorming how we want to address this. What issues that, as I heard here, lead is a priority, addressing the piping issues that are not part of life safety. So if we want to build that into that 14 million and build on top of that, how are we going to do that going forward?
Can I ask you about the American with
Disabilities
Disabilities Act? There's a little girl in a wheelchair in our district now, and I believe she has a sister in a wheelchair. For Crow Island, there's been remediations made so she can access the building. She will go on to Skokie soon and have a sister. So how, these issues are pretty pressing for this family. So
we'll continue to evaluate
moves through the district.
individual needs, and I know we'll have students at other schools that will have needs as well. We'll look to accommodate that through our operating budget and evaluate those needs as they come up. We did address them last year through our operating funds. We didn't use any of our capital project funds to address that. And then we will continue to do that going forward. We still need to accommodate our students even if we don't need to be in compliance with the ADA.
We feel strongly, I feel strongly that those are modifications we have to invest in given the immediate need of students to access the educational program regardless of their disability or ability. So that's been something that the board's been very supportive of. We feel strongly about that we can make some amends, that are customized basically as necessary to move forward. I should also know this dovetails into the other goal that we have, which is more inclusionary practices, that we are seeing, especially in early childhood, more students who want and their families want them to access a general environment and see the benefits of that. So we are going to see, as we have more and more students with some of these more physical challenges, that we'll have to evaluate and have some planning. So that will also be important. And again, the board has typically, at the time in my term here, has always supported us in investing in that manner because it's core and critical to our mission.
Yes, we're all on the same page in that regard. Any other questions regarding the financial piece? We will certainly be exploring it and sharing it publicly going forward over the next several months and into the coming school year.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is I think as we hear the feedback from the community on areas that they really care about or things that we have to think about as next steps moving forward, we should use that to help inform how we prioritize these projects. And if we bring things on or how we think about modifying or what we can bundle together, I think it's important to hear from the community also to make sure that we're in lockstep with them on the values.
And actually, glad you brought that up, Emily, because the board direction at the last meeting was just proceed and plan as if there's going to be no additional funding, so that we get a cycle of our health, life, safety needs out there, so we have some sort of plan. But as the board listens and starts to look potentially at modifying the master facility plan or something, we'll have to obviously take into account the schedule may have to be modified at things. But I think that's an important distinction to make is, we're proceeding to make sure there's clarity around what needs to be done, the timeline that we think, given the funding we have right now, makes the most sense in the programming we have. But we'll have to absolutely keep an eye on that.
Yes, it's important to understand that we try to minimize our costs. We also try to do a lot of this stuff in-house, the things we can do, which helps save us money. Adam and his team do a great job of analyzing that and seeing what they can cross off the list, and several things have been that were on the health, life, safety list have been taken care of in-house. All right, moving on to architect selection. We wanted to give an update on that process. We do have a need to hire an architect. It's necessary to have an architect of record. We are sunsetting our relationship with Green Associates, who's been our architect of record for over 20 to 30 years. They are working with us this summer on the Summers project, but we do want to have an architect of record in place before we start the new school year, due to the fact that the timing of next year's Summers project with over $4 million in projects, we need to get started early on that to evaluate what trades we'll need to get bid packages put together, to work with engineers on some of these items. So an architect of record is a key partner in doing that. We have spent a significant amount of time, most of you at this table have spent time over the last 6 months since we went out for our RFQ in December on evaluating the 16 candidates that we had, narrowing that to 6, and then we did many site visits over the last couple of months, narrowed that to 4 candidates. We did break the project down into 2 pieces, Project A, which was all buildings other than Crow Island, and then Project B, which is Crow Island. We feel it's necessary to move forward with an architect of record, and don't feel that the candidates that bid on B would be interested in handling just the day-to-day operations of the health, life, safety piece. So at the end of May, we will schedule interviews with 2 candidates that bid both on A and B. That does not necessarily mean they will be in place if we do move forward with the design on Crow Island, should a future referendum pass. At that point, we would look at a design partner for that building, and it may be one of those that bid on Project B or the ones that bid on both A and B. So we will move forward with that process at the end of May in evaluating those 2 final candidates and get a partner in place at the end of that.
I just want to make sure it's really clear to our community too that Megan and Maxie and Emily have been invested in this process, so have been on those site visits, have been working with us in anticipation of their sitting here at the board table. So we've had a lot of board activity in this area, in addition to Nat attending and Dawn, primarily in this arena, so that we will inform to make this decision collaboratively.
Yes, it was a good opportunity for them to jump in early in their role as board members, and were able to visit many sites with us, so that was very helpful, and their feedback was helpful. We've also had a community partner engaged as well.
Well, yeah, a couple of community architects who helped us along the way too.
Yes. So we will continue that process and finalize that towards the end of May so we can begin negotiating. Hopefully bring the contract to the board in early August. Any
Great.
questions on that?
We can't bring it faster?
Well, we can, we just want to make sure that they have enough notice.
Fair enough.
We're looking at the timeframe, our May is kind of booked with.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. So let's move on to other business. So I'll ask the board to mark a calendar for the board-hosted retirement and recognition event. And this year it's going to be held on May the 23rd at Pinstripes. All right, so on to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
One public comment.
Okay.
Mr. White.
Please approach the podium if you would.
Say too long.
I understand.
I'm Ron White. Earlier I mentioned that I was at Crow Island in the 1940s. And so it's also it's about 30 years since I sat through a District 36 board meeting. It was interesting many years ago on the committees on Skokie School to go exploring in that building, those places where, as a student, you're not allowed. But anyway, 30 years I've been an election judge. And where you say you have 37% turnout? No. You had about 80% of votable turnout in this recent referendum. You were soundly defeated. We had voters in my precinct that finished voting at 7:15. There are that many. Now, I'm also involved with Caucus Council. You know, that annual questionnaire to our entire 5,000 approximate. We get about 1,000 replies. For 2 years, I've been wanting to ask that question. How many of your students are in public school? Figure about approximately half. The other half are in private, parochial, Montessori's, wherever. They're not in District 36. I think it's quite possible that a fair number of those voters in that rush that we had on election day were from Loyola and the various other Catholic schools, or Concordia, or up there in private schools in Lake County. And I'm told that in Winnetka there are some who sent their children east to the old traditional college prep schools. In fact, it's interesting in doing history of Winnetka, the Winnetka plan, the Bennett plan, very specific about the public school structure at that time. I'm sorry, I have only about 30 seconds, but the questions to ask are, how many of your students on the next questionnaire, caucus questionnaire, are in the public schools at District 36? I'd be interested to get an accurate number, because I've been stonewalled on that question. My time's up. But the audience is rapt.
Thank you very much. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Livingston.
Here.
Mr. Solis.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Kona.
Yes.
Ms. Clark. Yes. Ms. Rose.
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell Wilson. Yes. Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Meeting is closed.